Today we're going to cover chapter 13, comparison. In this chapter we'll talk about comparison and contrast. We'll discuss what comparison is, what contrast is, as well as ranking and other different things that have to deal with comparison. So the quote for this chapter is, "There is no quality in the world that is not what it is merely by contrast. Nothing exists in itself." So what does this quote mean? So the fact that there is no quality in the world that is not what it is merely by contrast. What does this mean? Do you agree with the quotation above that nothing exists in itself, but rather by contrast? Explain what you think that Melville meant. All right, so the learning outcomes within this chapter, the first one is understanding comparison and contrast. The second one is learning about reading strategies. The third, reading and reacting to a professional essay. Fourth, reading and reacting to a student essay. Fifth, planning a comparison and contrast essay. 6, writing the first draft. 7, revising the essay. And 8, editing the writing. So learning outcome 1, understanding comparison and contrast. Making a comparison is the most important form of analysis used to rank things. So when you're ranking things, you're looking at what makes them similar and what makes them different. So comparison is the most important form of an analysis used when you're ranking things. So if you're going to say that someone is smarter than another, you're ranking. How would you rank maybe? You could probably use GPA, IQ tests. Again, this is all subjective, but you could use those things and that would rank because it's showing, okay, well, this is where this person is, this is where this other person is. So that's how they're similar or how they're different, and you would rank them accordingly. The effectiveness of any ranking depends on the point of comparison that the author is trying to make. So if something, the effectiveness of any ranking depends on the point of comparison the points of comparison that are being made. So comparing versus contrasting. So comparison, that deals with similarities between subjects. Contrast deals with the differences. So again, when you're comparing things, you're talking about how they are similar. When you're contrasting, you're talking about how they are different. Also, the essay, again, it depends on the points of comparison that the author is trying to make. So the way that you would structure your comparison and contrast essay depends on the point that you're trying to make. And this will make more sense when we talk about the different points of comparison, but it depends on the point the author is trying to make. All right, learning outcome 2. Learning about reading strategies. So reading strategy 1, recognizing common comparison and contrast patterns. The first one is a point by point. Within this, a subject is addressed according to different points of comparison. So with this, you'll discuss a subject and then the different points of how it's similar as well as how it's different. The next thing is subject by subject. Within a subject by subject comparison, the writer would first discuss one subject in the first part and then the other subject in the second part. And then the third one is similarities and differences. This one's pretty self-explanatory. It addresses similarities between the subjects in the first part and differences in the second part. So this is a visual representation of that. So you have the point by point, subject by subject, and then similarities and differences. So within these three structures or patterns, they all have the same beginning. So within your beginning will be your introduction, where you'll have your thesis statement. So basically this is letting the reader know why these things are worthy of being compared and contrasted, as well as it'll kind of allude to the pattern. So the similarities will be the difference, or the beginning, So the part of this that's the same is going to be the beginning as well as the end. Those are all the same. The only difference will be the middle. So that's whatever pattern you choose. So if I decide to make the point of which point by point would work, then my beginning and my ending is going to be the same for that, whether it's subject by subject, similarities or differences, or point by point. But the difference will be subject by subject here, as opposed to, or point by point here, or subject by subject, or similarities and differences. So the difference is going to be within the middle part. That's the only thing that will be different within the patterns. The beginning and end will always be the same. The only difference will be the middle. So subject by subject, the point I'm trying to make about subject 1 or subject 2. So let's say I'm talking about two specific books. Let's say I was talking about Moby Dick and then the Sea Wolf. So let's just say I was going to talk about the main characters. So the main character here, I would say main characters, and then this would be Moby Dick, and then this would be the Sea Wolf. Then the next thing, if I said I was going to talk about the setting here, this would be the setting of Moby Dick, and then the setting of the Sea Wolf. And then here, if I was going to talk about let's say excitement. I could say, talk about the excitement of Moby Dick here, and then the excitement of the sea wolf here. The next thing you have subject by subject. Let's stick to the same thing. So if I was going to talk about Moby Dick, that would be subject 1. If I was going to talk about the sea wolf, that would be subject 2. And then for similarities and differences, same thing. Again, only difference is the middle part. I would talk about the similarities between the two books here in similarities, and then the differences between the two here where it says differences, and then again, the ending would be the same. All right, so the next thing for learning about reading strategies continued, strategy 2 is recognizing comparison and contrast transitions. So you're going to have transition words when you're writing. That's going to let the reader know that you're going between comparison and that you're going through contrast. So watch for transitions or linking words that alert you to specific comparisons and contrasts. So some examples of comparison words, you'll have although, much like, both, in the same way, similarly, likewise. So these are words that should let the reader know that, oh, this person is about to write about a point of comparison. Some words for contrast would be although, on the one hand, on the other hand, by contrast, however, but. Those are words that will let the reader know that this person is now shifting into contrast. So those are, you need to make sure that you have transition words within your essay, because that lets the reader know this person is saying how something is similar or they're saying how something is different. So you want to make sure that you have that. All right, so learning outcome 3, and this is practice. So reading and reacting to a professional essay. So read hemispheric specialization, and this talks about handedness and the mind. What pattern of organization do the authors use? That's one of the questions. What transitions are used? And then use a T-chart to detail similarities and differences. So this is practice with comparison and contrast. Now, learning outcome 4 is reading and reacting to a student essay. Now, this essay is Life in a War Zone. Read this one and then answer these questions. What pattern of organization do the authors use, or does the author use? What is the thesis of this essay? And then use a T-chart to detail similarities and differences. Again, this is practice. Learning outcome 5, planning a comparison and contrast essay. Again, as with every other essay, you want to make sure that you select a topic. That's vitally important because, again, going back to tying it to the traits, you have the traits of ideas, which encompasses selecting a topic. If you have no idea, you don't know what you're going to write about. So again, select a topic. Select a topic you know at least something about. It will make your job so much easier. So you want to make sure you select a topic. That's the very first step. Second thing, gather details. You can use organizers. Those are very useful here, especially, again, if you're a visual learner. And they're good just for anyone to help you organize your thoughts and your ideas. So some diagrams that are suitable for comparison. The most, I guess you could say, popular one is the Venn diagram that shows similarities and differences between subjects. So if you are uncertain as to what a Venn diagram is, that would be this. So it's the two circles. So let's say this is topic A and then topic B. So the middle shaded part, that's going to be, of course, where they overlap. So that's going to be similarities. And then the parts where they do not overlap, that's going to be differences. So this is going to be differences. And this will be differences. So this is a Venn diagram. So that helps you with similarities and differences. The other one, like some of the student examples or the professional essay examples gave, was a T-chart. You can also use a T-chart. So again, use what works. So a T-chart is going to look like this. So if we go to Life in a War Zone, you could say brother's room, and the sister's room. And then list the different points of the sister's room, the different main points that were given, and the different main points about the brother's room, which were given. So these are the different types. You've got a Venn diagram, And you also have a table diagram. Oh, sorry, not a table, T-chart. So you have a Venn diagram, and then you also have a T-chart. Let me zoom in on this a little bit. So Venn diagram and T-chart. Venn diagram, similarities here, differences here. T-chart, main points of one thing as compared to main points of another thing. So those are two types of organizers that are suitable for comparison and contrast. All right, so the next thing is writing a thesis statement. Again, every essay, no matter what pattern of organization it is, must have a thesis statement. So after collecting your details for your essay, you want to make sure that you write a thesis statement, and not just any thesis statement, an effective thesis statement, meaning this statement is going to tell your reader exactly what this whole paper is going to be about. This should name your topic and identify important information, an important point of comparison, and an important point of comparison between them. All right, learning outcome 6, writing the first draft. So creating the first draft puts all of your planning into concrete form. So if you have a table diagram or you have a Venn diagram or you just write out a list, creating the first draft puts all of that planning into concrete form, meaning puts it into paragraph form for you to be ready to publish or, edit or whatever you need to do. So creating an opening paragraph, the opening paragraph needs to capture the reader's attention and introduce your thesis statement. Again, no introduction or no opening should be without a thesis statement. So some examples that you can use within your introduction, you can start with a surprising statement. For example, let's just say you were going to talk about the death penalty and you said, did you know that the death penalty cost more to carry out than life imprisonment for 30 years. So that's a surprising statement, and it's letting the reader know that you're about to discuss the death penalty and life imprisonment and make a comparison and contrast of the two. You can begin with a question. That also is a question. You can start with a quotation. You can share an anecdote. If you don't know what an anecdote is a story. You probably should remember that. The next thing is developing the middle paragraphs. Use one paragraph to address one of the subjects and the other paragraph to address the second subject. You want to make sure again that you use transition words because that directs the reader the way in which you're going, whether you are comparing or you're contrasting. Use specific details for each subject and arrange your details logically by location or by importance. Depends again on the point the author is trying to make. Forming a closing paragraph. The closing paragraphs of your essays should provide summarizing thoughts about the subject. Consider offering a final idea about the subjects. So again, you want to restate your thesis statement, you want to summarize your thoughts, and then lend a final idea. So if you want to know more about this in depth, you can go back to the video about summarizing where I discussed this conclusion a little more in detail. But again, no conclusion should be less than 5 sentences because you're going to restate your thesis, you're going to summarize everything you've already told the reader throughout the duration of the paper, and then you're going to lend some sort of a final idea. Next thing, learning outcome 7 is revising the writing. So this involves adding, deleting, rearranging, and reworking parts of your writing. It often begins with a peer review. What is a peer review? You probably want to define that and then also discuss why a peer review is helpful. So what are some reasons that a peer review is helpful? Peer reviews help in that it's a fresh set of eyes. It's someone who doesn't know exactly what it is that you're trying to say, but at the same time, they can help. So if I don't know what you're trying to say, I can highlight something and say, this doesn't make sense. So to you, it might make sense because you know what you're trying to say, but I might not know what you're trying to say, so I would say this doesn't make sense. Or you might think, okay, well, this makes sense, and so you don't have a thesis statement. A classmate might read it and say, where's your thesis statement? So peer reviews are very beneficial in that they provide another insight with someone who's pretty much knows about the same as you do, but they don't know exactly what you're talking about. Another thing you can do is add sensory details. These are going to help to show similarities and differences. So you want to make sure that you don't just tell the reader, you want to show them. And you can do this with sensory details. So sensory details are going to be what you see, what you hear, what you smell, what you taste, what you touch. So remember, 5 senses, sensory details. All right, learning outcome 8, editing the writing. So the main work of editing is correcting your revised first draft. So editing is not only using spell check. Spell check, it does help. However, you want to make sure you proofread all of your work. Spell check is not going to catch something that grammatically is sound but just doesn't make any sense. So you want to make sure that you are actually reading and not just relying on spell check. Also, you want to make sure that when there are revisions, you actually take the revisions. There's no point in revising something if you aren't going to edit. So make sure that you edit once you receive revisions. So correcting subject-verb agreement, a verb must agree with the subject of the sentence. So whether that's in person, whether that's in number, you want to make sure that there's subject-verb agreement. So a subject is singular, the verb must be singular. If the subject is plural, the verb too must be plural, except for in the case of I and you, where I and you, which are singular, take plural verbs. For example, I look and I see you. So I is singular, but look is plural. You is singular, and you is singular, but then you have the word see. So you smile at me, so you want to make sure that those are correct. Now, if you were using them incorrectly, you would say I looks and you sees. So that doesn't work. You want to make sure the agreement is correct. So this concludes chapter 13, comparison. So make sure that you come prepared to discuss it.